So, like, you think it's too late for Kanye to come out in support of gay rights?
You know, I guess if Kevin Spacey got away with it as late as he did, anything could happen.
Because, like, think about it. Like, Kanye West is still Kanye West.
He
Having him
still
on,
made graduation.
yeah, he still made graduation. Having him on your side would be a great boon.
Would it be a boon or a curse? I'm afraid that, I'm afraid something. God damn it. Hold on, we have to restart as we did this. My mother started screaming my dog's name in the background, and my mic definitely picked that up.
My end didn't, so it's staying in. You and your dysfunctional household, saved only by
It,
Kanye
it
West.
wasn't. It wasn't a bad scream. It wasn't a bad scream. She was happy to see. I swear. I swear. My family's not animal abusers. She's just like a sweet mom. It's like, oh, Mickers, Mickers. His
That
name is
that
Mickey.
now we gotta stop the podcast because that sounded
You
terrible.
don't. You don't get to say that after what you pulled in our test. All right.
uh,
We're doing this. All right. Fuck it. We'll do it live.
what a great start. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Welcome back to Dabble and Babble. Ladies, gents, and all those who fall in between. My name, of course, Brister XD, or you can call me Brian. I really don't care.
And my name is Pipsqueak. Welcome back to another episode. Remember when we did these weekly?
I remember
I
a time
apologize.
before 9/11.
Oh God. Uh, it's been a crazy last year, and by crazy last year, I mean, 3 months into it, I got addicted to Destiny 2, and that ate up my time.
Yep. Nothing actually, vital to your life, or something that'd be like, oh yeah, no, don't worry, I just had a mild case of like appendicitis I had to take care of, or like
Nope.
you just got into Destiny.
Season of the Haunted was really good.
Blame Bungie.
Honestly, yeah, fuck Bungie. What have they been doing with their charities and donations to LGBT, like charity foundations? Fuck them. What have they actually done?
Yeah, unlike Wizards of the Coast, who are looking out for the little man.
It's the coast paragons of the downtrodden and the creative. So before we begin, I was a little bit late to the podcast, but we have a few ideas for our listener at home that we'll get to later. But I would like to apologize for being late to our recording session. My mother had bought a bunch of scratch tickets for her. She's a charge nurse and bought it for all of her nurses just because. And she never got to give them out. So she's like, all right, it's been like 3 weeks since I was supposed to give these out. Let's just scratch them. And so we made a whole 8 doubloons, crisp 8 smackaroos. The cost of all the scratch tickets was $50.
So,
And it wasn't like we had one scratch ticket that was worth $8. No, we had like 6 of them that were worth $1 and one that was worth 2.
that is honestly pretty good for the yes. I feel like scratch tickets should just be like either 5.25 or the jackpot. Giving like these small like fucking home poker game pot amounts is insulting for those who have hope.
Those who have hope. Look, all right, I don't know what you're talking about, but she gave me my tickets and I made a whole clean $2 profit.
Because there was no expense. You just got given a lottery ticket.
Exactly.
Are you gonna
Who
claim
needs
that?
Andrew? Yeah, absolutely. Who needs Andrew Tate in the Hustler University? What you gotta do? Invest all your money into lottery scratch offs.
Listen, at this point, listen, okay, you know that the lottery is eventually going to pay out. You don't know about Bitcoin anymore, okay? It's doing stable. The lottery, that's backed by the government. It has to be safe.
Absolutely. You know what? There is a lot. Starting this podcast, there is so much we could talk about. The internet has not been a quiet place, so it's a struggle to try and pick like a specific set of topics to speak about instead of just like, oh, Andrew Tate, Logan Paul, Coffeezilla, crypto, whatever.
We didn't start the fire. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, absolutely. But 2023 has been at least so far, a better start than past the last few years since the big one, 2020.
Yeah.
Um, it's been at least for you, me, and our friends, a lot of good stuff has happened, or just genuinely has been less shit.
I mean, I would say that. I mean, I haven't. I I still think back on like I know it wasn't last year. I said it was last year because it felt like last year, but the Capitol riots.
Oh yeah, the Capitol riots still feel like they were a year ago.
Yeah, if I just remember sitting in my house with my brother like that, and like I was sitting on the table and like, hey, did you get the same alert I did? People are storming the Capitol, right? Oh, that's crazy. Well, I hope someone's probably gonna get shot and then it's gonna disperse. And then it kept going.
Yeah. There is like don't get me wrong, 2021 was a pretty shit year. 2022 was less. Actually, I can't even say it was less dramatically depressing because there was a whole war that started and is still going.
Is it really a
Uh,
war? It's a military conflict, okay? If listen, Russia, here's a tidbit from us, the US. Just call it a military conflict and you won't have to deal with the consequences.
we didn't have to deal with the consequences because we won or left. Russia has done neither.
It's not too late though.
It's not too late. 2022 though was on top of that the horror going on across the seas. It was just a year of stagnancy and entropy. Um, I know it might be a very someone I looked up to, a person a lot of people looked up to, passed away. Um, I was
Pope Benedict.
yeah, you know me, I'm Hispanic, so I was raised Catholic. Really miss that pedophile. That's not true. I'm not Catholic. Nah, I was a big
And you
fan of
do miss him.
Technoblade.
You
And
do miss that pedophile a lot.
I do miss him. He really showed how to what you could do with just love of the game. Oh Christ!
Love of it. You know that YouTube policy that was like now monitoring like the first
Yeah,
the first 15 seconds of at check for a swear word or it gets automatically demonetized.
yeah, we're not getting monetized.
Not anytime soon. New year, baby.
New year, new us.
Yeah.
But yeah, 2023, good start so far.
Yeah.
And let's see, we had a small list of topics we wish to talk about before we got into this.
Yeah.
What would you like to start with?
I was gonna say I opened up with it as a joke, but Wizards of the Coast, the new open I think what opening L
They're getting rid of their open license deal for
Yeah.
new set of things, and it has stirred quite the shitstorm across the
Yeah.
entire internet.
In case you don't understand what it means, most games have a license, like say Call of Duty, where like if you make something using the name Call of Duty or using the Call of Duty like system, if you could get your hands on that, you're asked to get read by lawyers fast and you can open your own door. However, things such as Warhammer and D&D, especially 5e, have an open license agreement where you can use its system, even its own characters, and create your own content with it, and you're perfectly legal. You can make money from it, and it's okay.
A lot of huge businesses started online, things like not just like official D&D content, but very famously Pathfinder stemmed off of D&D before becoming its own distinct game system out there. But
not to mention Critical Role.
Critical, we'll get into that because take it with a grain of salt. I saw it last night on Twitter, which could be true, could be not, but I'll get into something later. But recently, they have a leaked version of their updates to the open licensing policy had come out, saying that it's no longer open licensing. I believe if a project or creation makes over, what was it, 750,000, then WotC gets the rights to fuck with it.
Yeah, basically they want. Here's like a quote from the actual like head of Wizards of the Coast. They believe that D&D as it stands is under monetized, and they want to create it like gaming, where they have like a substantial revenue from it. Like basically monetize it like we do video games, which is no one's ever complained about. Video games get it right 100% of the time.
Absolutely. Never once complained about video
Never
game
got sued
monetization.
in the British court of law ever. Never, never,
Never.
never, never. But yeah,
Uh,
it's so funny to me that this is happening because they saw what Games Workshop went through when they started doing this shit, right?
mm-hmm.
Like like it's like seeing your best friend, right? Him
Right?
just saying like, "Hey, you're in the garage with your little skate park. I'm gonna do a sick trick, right?"
Mm-hmm.
You see him go on your little ramp you made together, right? Your brothers in arms, really. He goes up the ramp, does the vert, and immediately shatters his collarbone. He is paralyzed from the waist down. His mother, who's single, raising up, now has a burden for his life, and you,
Jesus.
as his friend, decide for my homie, I'm gonna try the same trick.
Yep. I I had spoken to one of my partners today, and she had theorized about the reasoning why, because this is a cosmically stupid decision, catastrophically dumb to do right after pushing a. Because the new edition of D&D, one D&D, isn't popular. Nobody likes it. There's a few choice changes people like, and nothing else. Not to mention the D&D movie is coming out very soon. They are doing huge marketing pushes for D&D, and so this leaking, she suspected that maybe WotC or Hasbro is looking to sell. Either WotC is hoping to, Hasbro is hoping to sell WotC, or Hasbro itself is looking to get sold, and this was to make it more appealing to people who would want the property. And
It, it's not every day you see a company poison pill itself by accident.
yep, and it is the official 5e Discord, which there is one of those I learned. One of the mods put out a statement basically saying, "Don't talk about it; you'll get muted or banned," which seems to confirm that well, they claimed that what that got leaked is an early version of the thing and has no relevance to one D&D going forward. And I think that no matter what, it is. Some people believe that WotC is going to back down. Games Workshop is kind of in the process of backing down, but also other people believe that they won't because Hasbro is a famously shitty, greedy company.
Yeah. Hey, those people who make your little Nerf darts, they hate you. They want to siphon off money from your children like sirens from the sea.
They made a killing off of Nazi bronies. I'm not even joking.
The thing is too is like not only apparently this is not it's not just the open licensing agreement, but apparently behind the scenes they were planning like video games that they just canceled.
Mm-hmm.
They're canceling internal projects to focus on this.
Yep. Although to be fair, did you see anything about the last D&D video game they released?
No, and that probably says a lot.
The only thing I've seen about that video game was the Angry Joe Show review. And he lambasted the game. It was bad.
Yeah.
Do you remember that like kind of obscure Lord of the Rings game, War in the North, that came out for the 360?
Kinda.
It was basically that, but for D&D.
That sounds not successful.
No, it was very bad. One of the characters was way more powerful than the others. There was no real loot system. The missions were repetitive. The game was buggy. The story was uninteresting. That kind of shit. But to get into what I said earlier, I have heard, and I cannot verify, Critical Role has been silent about this recently because allegedly they have special permissions with Wizards of the Coast, which means their business won't be affected.
Well, of course. It's like it'd be like if you're fucking Dukes of Hazzard and Ford just came out in favor of the Nazi Party, and you're not saying anything because, well, they let us use their car. If we don't have that, we're kind of fucked.
Yeah. Obviously, take this with a grain of salt. My evidence for this was a Twitter post I am having trouble remembering. So, if this does turn out to be true, then I mean that sucks. If not, and Matt Mercer is like one D&D is cringe, we're moving to Pathfinder, then that's great.
Yeah, It's like it'd be fucking hilarious if like they had to like part of their special dealing was they had to move to a one D&D, and you could
Oh
just the
God.
first 3 episodes they like try to like stick it out because they have too much on the line, and you can just clearly see that they hate it.
Like,
They're like fumbling, asking questions because that shit's live. They can't edit that.
yeah. Also, one D&D, just from what we've seen, just is a bad system.
Yeah.
It's just bad. Like, it had some changes I like. The Ranger finally feels good. But also, what did they do to attack rolls? Why?
Inspiration. Don't get me fucking started.
It's miserable. Um, I believe piggybacking off of that. Hold on, I'm pulling up our thing. Is there? Uh, we're on opposite ends of a high D&D arc. You said. You
Yeah.
want to discuss that?
Yeah, but first I want to close out this section of this idea with the thought of this is why I think this entire saga kind of proves the point in that tabletop RPGs are a very odd beast I see in a lot of ways where it is one of those consumables that is so dependent on people that we truly have power over what we consume in companies.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think back to the Gary Gygax quote, which is the secret that we don't want our players to know is that they don't need us. They really
Yeah.
don't need us. We are a convenience.
I over the summer I actually got my hands on a vintage copy of the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Player's Handbook, and there is reading through this compared to the actual PHB for 5th edition. The 5th edition PHB is like 2-3 times the size, and the rules are infinitely more well balanced. But reading through this handbook, there is so much space dedicated to the flavor of things, building visual pictures and very distinct visual imagery. And as the editions of D&D have gone on, like, I love 5th edition. 5th edition was my introduction to TTRPGs. But we are witnessing a time where, like, if you think about 5th edition right now, you probably your own world that you've created, which, by the way, I created, or like the other D&D games you play, and you think of that. Do you even know what a Drizzt is?
Let's ask you a question. How many of your games have dragons in them?
Fuck, not enough.
Exactly. How many times do you actually explore a dungeon? Do you even know what a beholder is? I work at Barnes & Noble, right? I saw a board game that's like Trivial Pursuit, but D&D.
Ooh.
Who fucking actually knows anything about D&D lore that plays D&D? A substantially little few. Precious few. I'll tell you that much.
The most people know about D&D lore comes from the other modules they publish, like like the other settings, Ravenloft, Spelljammer, Eberron. But those aren't unique to D&D. Other people wrote those. They just, all right, you're in the Forgotten Realms now. That's what people like. Nobody cares about the Forgotten Realms.
Exactly. It's like just it's an odd case study, and I think if nothing else, if this does go to shit, which I honestly doubt, because like I said, we have more power as a consumer. It will truly show that, like, hopefully the next Games Workshop or Wizards of the Coast in this case will finally realize that they can't fuck around like this. They can't keep getting away with this because we're gonna keep fucking biting.
Half the Warhammer community is now 3D printing their models and swapped over to BattleTech. Pathfinder is right there. Mr. Paizo is at my door knocking, trying to get through my windows to get me to buy Pathfinder Kingmaker.
It is very much like a fucking, like, you're part of a like tyrannical government that's gone to 154, and all of a sudden we're making our own weapons and fucking reloading our own bullets and whatnot, just preparing to fight.
God, now I want this to go to shit just so I can put on my powdered wig and blast I don't know, who's a Watsy person.
The son of Gary Gygax.
The son of Gary Gygax with that stupid overpowered musket from the DMG. Which side note, there are guns in 5th edition. I own the DMG. They have a small little section for firearms. They are wildly overpowered. I guess that's like, oh, they're guns. Sure, they're essentially just heavier crossbows with bigger damage dice, but they're still crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I would love to stick that overpowered musket. Actually, I shouldn't continue. My lawyer has advised me I can
in
do
Minecraft,
in Minecraft. Oh god.
Oh god. But yeah, speaking of D&D, we're on the opposite ends of that arc we talked about, and
yep,
it raises an interesting point on like what we believe, you know, tabletop RPGs are their strengths at, and what D&D is, because I think we're both on opposite ends of the spectrum, and the idea of like you actively try to make story arcs, at least in this campaign, which is based in Eberron, in case anyone's wondering.
Yeah.
If in case some fucking stranger who's poor enough to be listening to this far in cares, we're not gonna spoil it. We're not one of those people. I'm not. Pip maybe is, but I'm not. Don't worry. Just know that my character is a Dragonborn who's a cleric, is very basically religious in that way. The Silver Flame, if you're familiar with Eberron Sending, if not, it's basically fantasy, like, you know, urban fantasy in like the village sense, which is more condensed.
It's equivalent to like the light from World of Warcraft, or it's a lot of combinations of like, I don't want to say Christian imagery because Keith Baker has a very interesting way of writing the flame, but it's a force of righteousness instead of being a traditional god.
Yeah. My character, Dragonborn Cleric, is like, you know, all for that, and of course in an urban setting, the church is corrupt. Who would have fucking guessed? And I may or may not have defenestrated a cardinal.
More or less, yeah. My good friend Brister here, I ran this Eberron campaign. There's a preset module called, I believe, Embers of the Last War, which I ran. And Brister here was in scheduling conflicts led to him missing a few sessions, but I said that I wanted to run what I called a Season 2, which took place 10 years later. All the consequences, all the victories, all the losses would be worked into the new story. And Brister here, who is a writer, wrote a really good little piece about his character, defenestrating essentially a cardinal of the Silver Flame over the course of the 10 years. And moving into this new campaign 10 years later, that was something I really wanted to focus on, because it was like, if
Terrorism?
this were terrorism. If it were a video game and Brister's character was an NPC, that would be a big event that got talked about a lot. And working that into the story of this new campaign was something that meant a lot to me. I wanted to do right by him, and I did. I'm still in the process of doing the same for all the other players in the game. Everybody gets character arcs. On the other hand, Brister's game, which is very much a sailing the high seas pirate type adventure,
which is not based on anything, my own invention.
Yeah, absolutely, completely original, completely homebrew. One of the things I think you focus on a lot is the adventure of things, the process of getting where we need to go. To talk very vaguely, we wrapped up an arc where we needed to break a strike. And we needed to break a strike to get a MacGuffin. And that could have been pretty simple, you know? We show up there, we threaten the workers, and then we leave. But the arc had gone on farther and longer than we could have predicted, because everybody there was a character. And I think the end of the arc ended very dramatically, very climactically. Several characters betrayed us. And
your
I
character
think we
fucking died, technically, then got brought back to life.
My character died and got resurrected. I think we all were expecting a betrayal from the one NPC, but the fact it was a double betrayal from two different people, and that we didn't really have a clear eye of how it was going to go. Like, the goal at the end of the day wasn't what mattered there. It was how you chose to get us there.
Yeah. And I think it goes into the philosophy of how you present things. Because my philosophy when it comes to, I think, is more unorthodox in that I'm not good with numbers. I'm real dumb. You put more than 4 dice in front of me and say, "Hey, roll these and make this. Here's a set of dice. Make a game out of this." I don't know what the fuck to start with. And that's
evidently.
Yeah.
I only say that because one of our players in the Eberron campaign is still mad at you for that time you refused to heal her character during the boss fight.
We don't gotta talk about it.
Yeah, for context, they were fighting a robot dragon on a crashing airship,
Don't gotta talk about
and
it.
the bard went down and failed 2 death saves. And Brister's character is a cleric.
We don't gotta talk
And
about it.
the entire party is begging for Brister to heal the bard.
We don't gotta talk about it.
And Brister instead casts, I believe, insect plague. Or
Yeah,
insect swarm, I forget the
on a
name of the
creature
ability.
that's resistant to that damage type, which I totally forgot about it as game mechanic, which is like every single thing. And my defense to this day is it was funny. In actuality,
it was pretty funny.
afterwards, I wanted to kill myself because it was so embarrassing.
It was pretty funny. Especially because the spell itself is an area of effect spell, and the dragon just flew out of it.
Just flew out of the way. Yeah.
The bard did end up getting saved.
It'd be like spraying Febreze at a fly.
It was a very funny scene, and obviously that player isn't like, at least I don't think she's gonna like super mad at you or anything.
As soon as you meet in real life, she's gonna strangle me.
To be fair, you have that effect on people.
Yeah, I already can feel the garrote wire tightening around my neck.
But I bring this up because your sensibilities in regards to D&D, as you're saying, are very much at a story perspective rather than a gameplay.
Yeah, and it's particularly that type of storytelling where I think that gameplay in a tabletop RPG can be really strategic if you base your entire thing around it. If you don't, and you try to have an equal balance of combat and story, the combat tends to suffer a little bit, and you can never reach its full potential. And it kind of has to, or else it's gonna feel trite. It's like in a video game, like an open world, like Red Dead Redemption 2, right? You can engage in all the systems simultaneously. You got Deadeye, you're shooting, cover to cover, whatnot. But when the story takes focus, all you're left with is fucking being the Postal Service.
Yeah.
I feel like yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say there's the disconnect of your Arthur being... you can level up your Arthur almost to max very early on. And then in like an early game cutscene, one guy with a gun to your friend's head is like a huge challenge. Meanwhile, you've caught the legendary gunslingers and outdrawn them, and you have infinite health, and your Deadeye is already maxed out.
Chain smoking cigarettes.
Chain smoking cigarettes. I'm sure that won't come back to bite him.
Nope. But yeah, it's the sort of thing where I think when I approach D&D, what I like about it is, of course, the story because I'm a writer, but also when I eventually do put you guys in combat again, I feel like it will take more precedence because you're like having to focus more on the fight in that, oh fuck, we haven't fought in a while. And like now it's gonna matter. I mean, and I feel like the way I go about that is I think we have a similar style of that where we don't really fight a lot. We don't make dungeon crawler combats. But the way I get to that, where the stakes are, for you in the character driven section, we have, very personal stakes, and this fight is like, a showdown. Like we have facing the big bad. Like you try to make every fight that. My way of doing that, interestingly, is to create the most alive possible world to where the circumstances is always interesting.
Right.
I feel like all the character fulfillment you can have is best done outside of combat, because trying to tie that to like this guy is now dead kind of makes it so you can only take so much. You can not every story can really succeed with, and then he died. We all win.
Yeah.
We're all fine now. Let's all go off and get pregnant in the fucking prologue or epilogue.
I think one of the most this I really stuck with me was not the rope guy. There was a rope guy. He stuck with me, but not who I'm talking about. We were in Brister's world. We were walking to a bigger city. We were just on land. We were walking, taking the Sneaker Express, and we stopped in a settlement. And my character wanted to go see what was about the place, and I was expecting like in my head, I had a very distinct idea of what I could expect. Because when you're describing like a city, some of the first things you might describe are like the tavern scene or random happenings going out in the world, usually rolled on a table. But Brister instead chose to paint a scene of an older fellow just handing out books to people, and my character had a very deep conversation with the old man handing out books, and he gave my character a book, and that's something that very much stuck with me, both in and out of character.
Yeah, it was basically open book bazaar, which I don't remember. It might be practiced in Israel or other Middle Eastern countries, but where I got the inspiration from was they do have open book bazaars where an alleyway would just be filled with books, and there's just one guy looking after it, and people just kind of come and take a book they want, and then leave their money, drop off books that they want to donate, and that's how it works. It's oftentimes, countries like Japan have it as well. They have like fruit baskets where they just kind of trust people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I did with books is because I like there's a saying in one of those Middle Eastern countries. It might be Israel. I don't know. I probably should ask our Israeli about it.
Yeah, our friend who lives in Israel.
Yeah. There's a saying that goes like, the thief does not seek to learn, therefore he would never steal a book. And I feel like that kind of idea was important for your character who comes from a life of both prejudice and also crime.
Yeah. It was something that very much would stand out to her, and it completely shattered my expectation of what I thought would happen in the city, especially because up to this point, my character had been very heavily discriminated against from the various places we've been to, both for her religious beliefs and for the fact that she is a dark elf.
Yeah. And
which... continue, please.
I was gonna say, which now it just the D&D. That's D&D talking, not me.
It makes me believe, going back to how forgettable Forgotten Realms is. I will say one of the things people probably do know about Forgotten Realms is their interpretation of the Dark Elf, the matriarchal slavers who worship spiders and live in the Underdark, doing all kinds of things.
Florida.
That's their Florida. Oh, God. Florida with the values it had back in 1820.
Back when Andrew Jackson was king.
That is a perfect way of describing it. And that's one of the big things that people know about. And it's very popular because a lot of very famous Forgotten Realms stories take place there. I would say the most popular Forgotten Realms character, Drizzt. I mean, people like Drizzt because he's from there, and Drizzt's big gimmick is he's just a normal guy. He's pretty cool. He's a dark elf who's also just a cool dude. And comparing that to how you portrayed the dark elves, that's something I find in a lot of like homebrew games. Everybody has different opinions on specifically the dark elves and the tieflings, because they are the two races which have the most, I'd say, concrete flavoring in Forgotten Realms, and it's the ones that everybody likes to change. Your interpretation of the Dark Elves as an oppressed people recently freed from slavery is very distinct, and really helps my character, who is not only one of them, but she's also part of essentially a cult, a unpopular heretical religion, and so having that being discriminated against on the grounds of her race really does help explain why she would feel more accepting or feel like a heretical cult is more approachable than anybody else.
Yeah, because that's what happens. I feel like they when you have to approach something like that, I think it's important in all D&D games to like when it comes to character, because I'll tie this back to what we were doing in your game, which also deals with religion. With my character, your character, you have to understand. Like, I feel like in fantasy, especially in D&D games, when you try to like work off tropes mostly, because just you think the character. You think the players are going to just bring it all together and you make it fun no matter what the setting is? It's not going to work like that. What you have to do is you have to go down to the fundamental level of how do this shit work in real life? Because you can't just have a king and be like, oh yeah, this is just the land of cultists. Like, who the fuck gave them their deeds? Why are they still there? Why hasn't the army pushed them out?
Yeah.
And you have to understand, like, where these things, like, come from. And, like, how they market themselves, basically, and how they keep personnel. If you imagine everything, like, if you think of everything and, like, try to, expense report it via the lens of personnel and whatnot, suddenly everything gets a lot more interesting, and you don't have to think too much about, like, people always say, like, because I talk to people who starting out D&D in my store all the time. Not in my store, I don't fucking own it, but my Barnes & Noble. Always like, oh yeah, I always want to try D&D, but it's so hard to get into, so much. And I always tell them, it's not a lot to get into. It's you get in what you put out, or you put it puts out what you put into it. And so you can try as hard as you want, but there's people who are trying to take the next step. They're like, well, how do I create my own world? Because I tell them, oh yeah, I made my own world. You don't really need these books. It's like, really, how do you do that? Take any idea you have. Like, I have this cool idea for, like, I don't know, a dark kingdom. We're like, all right. How would it work in real life? Take the world you have, take everything out of it. How would you make it work? It's like, what do you mean? Like, okay, how do they grow their food? They're dark, so I guess they have to impress the workforce or like create a system of fear. Okay, how do they do that? I don't know, big army? How do they get the funds of the army? I don't know. Well, think about it. Mines, trade, just tyrannical taxation. And once you start thinking of like that, and like the pieces, like, well, this has to work together. It's like building blank. You're building a puzzle, right? For first, all the pieces are blank. Then you start connecting it all together, and then once you have that, well, I guess this is how it works. So it's all kind of like boring and analytical. It's like, okay, well, guess what? The puzzle you just been building is blank. Now you get to draw on it, kid. Once you have that foundation of like, okay, this all suddenly makes sense. You suddenly realize like you have your own unique solutions to ideas. That is where the creativity lies in most people's head. As soon as they had to think of it as a problem, they have no restrictions how to. All of a sudden, creativity comes really fucking easy.
Yeah.
And especially, and so when I think of like, oh, well, I don't want to just have this, I don't want to just make 12 Years a Slave again for your character. How do I make it interesting? It's like, well, who would have, if you're an expat slave basically, and you have basically no network of support group, where do you go to? Who would ask you out? Well, maybe some organizations, but this is an island campaign. You can go anywhere. Ooh, I don't know. Maybe a cult who preys upon the weak, feeble-minded, and poor, and gives them a home. I don't know. Something like that could happen in real life. Maybe once 7 times. Who knows?
Just we write what we know.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I'm a part of 3 cults. 2 of them I'm leader of. It's real draining.
I was once a legally ordained priest of Pastafarianism, or at least as much legal power as that certificate they sell on their website was.
I don't think that you could bring that to court and be like, sir, I had to run all those kids. Part of my religion.
Well, I don't think that, but supposedly once I bought that and the certification, I had legal access to, I don't know, I think the website said I could marry people.
You could wed people? Yeah.
I could wed people.
The reason I do not pay taxes, sir, against my religion, I'm a religious institution, my house.
I'm just thinking of that episode from Family Guy where Peter Griffin declares his house a micronation.
Yeah. But yeah, my point with all of that is that's how you deal with your faith. And the faith has come to the idea of, once you get out of it, like that fanaticism, what do you put your faith in next? And that's kind of what you would move to your character is like, now she's a part of her besides the whole journey to save the world because you're ordained, which I've done in a weird way too, but we don't want to get into it. Is what do I do after this and whatnot? And that's when I'm busy pressing on your character because my own character, Sully the Dragonborn cleric in your game, kind of already has the opposite problem where he has so much faith.
Yeah.
And the whole thing now is, which you've done a great thing of, because, before it was, it's funny to think how that character started, because you were there for it.
I remember very distinctly the idea for him being a funny Dragonborn bard.
Yeah, it was just I think my literal first thought was, what, because this is like the first meeting I've had with you. This is literally the first time I'm talking with you as well. I was like thinking like, what makes no fucking sense? Because my brain is naturally contrarian. It makes life very great.
Of course.
I immediately think like fucking. Well, what two things don't make sense? I'm looking online at like the PHP, which I'm reading for like the third time now, ever, and like all the races and whatnot. And I think, cleric, big scary lizard. And I think of the Pope being a giant alligator in a funny hat, and I think, that's funny, I'm going to create something off of that. And it's like, well, I don't know Stern. I wasn't born in the South, okay? I'm not fucking Baptist, so I don't know the shit off the top of my head. Let's make poetry. And then it slowly forms, and then somewhere in the middle of that, the Shmoney Dance got involved.
Don't remind me of the Shmoney Dance.
The Shmoney Dance
you hit the gritty at the Queen's big ball.
That's intentional. But yeah. It was like this joke idea of like, it's contrary, just a funny image in your head, and eventually it became a thing where like the setting you created so much is the setting you created so well. It's a very downtrodden, hard town, especially in my section. The Order is basically just Harlem or Hell's Kitchen, if we're all the Daredevil fans.
Oh, Daredevil will get involved in your character story sooner in this podcast.
But yeah, it became, I decided to venture on the idea of like, because I find it now, especially in the age of, the Catholic relapse and whatnot, that many people like try to always paint religion as like the bad guy, which they kind of have been.
Yeah.
They're not always great, and they always like move away from the faith aspect. Like, they always say like, always a character like having their faith broken or whatnot. I always liked the idea, and every opposite movie that every Christian movie is cringy as fuck. Is like, it's just them repeating the word faith and believe over and over again.
Yeah, God's not dead.
Yep, God's not dead. There's 2 movies of that. I don't know how they. Anyway, well,
there's 3.
Anyway,
there's 3. Anyway,
but yeah, I like to have a character where, his faith is not really broken, but more or less strenuously rigored to the point where he has to wonder what his life is like. Because what I'm writing is like inherently, and this goes to my philosophy of character, where it's not the fact that you do cringy shit because, oh, that's what my character would do. You can't just say that. You have to wonder, like, what kind of thing would drive my character to, one, stay in the party, and 2, commit heinous acts of violence. Because that shit doesn't come easy unless you're a psychopath.
Yeah.
And one of those things happens to be faith. And if you truly believe that you are radically right, and if you woke up and all you had is this idea that you are a harbinger of good, i.e. the Silver Flame, and you spent an entire adventure befriending people and trying your best to do right by them and fighting and hurting and being hurt and nearly dying and reviving people. He looks like you've done all this good, and your main organization, the main face of that, is fucking Elon Musk. You want to probably kill that guy.
Yeah. It is very interesting in fantasy settings in regards to, because an atheist character can't work like it would in normal fiction, because a lot of times in fantasy, the gods do objectively exist. In the Eberron setting, the Silver Flame is real.
Yeah, it's hard to be an atheist when you have Zeus constantly walking around fucking your bitch in his flip-flops.
in his flip flops. And your character, I think, the first adventure of campaign was focused mainly around the Sharn in Eberron. A lot of the main focus on it was about crime and conspiracy. You guys uncovered essentially the Illuminati and stopped World War II from happening. And moving forward, you guys have explored the different nations. You've left the Sharn. You went to places that were maybe better, such as Undare. Now you're in the home of the Silver Flame, which, side note, anybody who has an interest in Eberron lore, and you're like, oh, I love the Five Nations. Thrain is awful.
Yeah, it is. It is Blue Law Bible Belt Baptist bullshit.
I wanted to like Thrain, but I just couldn't like it. But, I'm running a campaign, and so I figured, all right, I'll put my feelings aside and try to present Thrain at its very best, so my players don't get, a biased view. And then I tried, and they still hate Thrain. They still hate
Then I tried.
I tried so hard to be objective and fair, and my players still hate Thrain. And not to say it's poorly written. No, Keith Baker did an excellent job of portraying what he wrote. It's just intentional that Thrain's kind of a bad place.
Yeah.
Which, I don't mean to brag or anything, but I've spoken to Keith Baker twice on Twitter. So I'm basically an expert.
One was about pizza, and one was about toilets.
One was about toilets, and the other one was about how I can best run the campaign to fuck with you guys. The pizza thing was someone else. Yeah, your character has been very, very fun to see as the party. You said earlier, man, you'd have to be a psychopath to enjoy hurting people. The party has two psychopaths in it.
Yeah.
And also, it's a mix of, very normal, good people. Even more so than adventurer standards. One of the players, the bard who I mentioned earlier, he's just a dad.
Yeah.
In the first season of the game, he adopted a little girl. And in the second season, he's married and he's trying to be a good father while also save the world. Or one of the players, one of my partners, Nimue, her character's a detective. She doesn't do lethal damage at all. Every one of her attacks is non-lethal. And you contrast that to characters, the Artificer and the I don't know what I would describe Perry as, who are actual psychopaths. They're reformed, but even still, it's absolutely intentional. Their characters still give in to their violent tendencies when push comes to shove. And so it's very interesting seeing a character like yours who is so driven by principle and faith, but who still isn't. It's because of those driving principles that he crosses the line. He killed one of the bad guys when the entire party said he shouldn't. He defenestrated a priest, and now that you guys are in Thrain, he's gone off completely on his own to eke out his own justice on the people that he deems are wrong instead of joining the party with their.
It also doesn't help that his adopted son is also there.
His adopted son? What do you mean? It's the Devil of Dura.
I love how as soon as because before we were like, at the end of the first season, we were like, I'm gonna hey, by the way, I adopted this kid. By the way, this is how good I am with naming conventions. My character's name is Sully. His life partner, which isn't even a relationship, because that's another thing I like to explore, which is not all romantic relationships have to be romantic. So he just has a mutual friend who runs the Weeping Willow, the prostitution house, called Shelly. And the son they adopted, the kid they adopted from one of the prostitutes who tragically died, is named fucking Simon.
So we have Sully, Shelley, and Simon. Each one of them is a different race. And Simon was planned to appear in that first campaign, but due to Brister's time commitments, I never got to introduce him. So in this new season 2, as I call it, Brister came to me with the idea of, what if he was Daredevil? And I love the idea. Daredevil is one of my favorite superhero comic. He's one of my favorite comic characters, and I love the show. And so we begin crafting Simon into the Devil of Dura, we called him. Okay. And we were also very, very careful, it's going to be a mystery to the party that Simon is the Devil of Dura. And then they all saw through it the moment he was introduced.
Yeah, it wasn't even funny.
They instantly guessed, oh, that's Simon.
Yeah. And to give his character some meaning, It wasn't just that I wanted Daredevil to be my son, as funny as it would be to have a little Daredevil in my life. Insert image of cat Daredevil.
I thought you were just gonna insert the clip of Matt Murdock getting hit by that truck.
But yeah, no. The reason I wanted that was in between games. Because you asked us smartly to write what the fuck our characters have been doing for the past 10 years.
Yeah,
There's a 10-year gap, right? I wanted the idea that solely after the whole church thing basically went underground and worked behind the scenes to better his station, which will come up in Thrain when he eventually confronts the party again. And the idea is, he is one of the main things he learned, because he went home, technically, the place of the Dragonborn, which he never met or knew about until he got a letter. He visited there and learned a very crucial thing, which is Dragonborns don't live that long. They don't. What's the lifespan again? 50 years?
Yeah, 50 to 60 if memory serves.
Yeah, less than a human. So he doesn't have that long. Not to mention that he was technically, his origin is basically that of a bioweapon. He was stolen from he was from a clutch of a dead dragon that the kingdom, who fucking basically offed itself via magic nuclear warfare. He was an experiment.
The kingdom of Sire decided, hey, let's try making dragon people.
Yeah, right. It's very much end of the war German crackpot theory.
Look, Warforged weren't cutting it. Let's try dragons.
Yeah, he's that. So who fucking knows how long he's gonna live? He could be forever or 30. He's already 12.
Yep. Yeah, that is another thing. He is the youngest in the party. He's only 12, I believe, right now, and he was 2 when the game began.
Yeah. And so, he understands that his time is limited, and now he's trying his best to do what he can for everyone else, because his main goal, his entire life, is in the service of others. Just not in the way he was intended. He understands completely, because he was left a book by his creator before, Thrain fucking exploded. That
Sire exploded, not Thrain.
Oh yeah, before Sire exploded. That he was meant to be a weapon. And all his creator wanted for him was to not be that. And so he has dedicated his life to the service of others, willingly and happily, to do best by them. And the one thing he did, which was fucking defenestrate that guy, afterwards he realized that, I had to do something drastic to open the window to basically clear the air, so that way real work could begin, i.e., throughout the second season, he's been trying to direct people to soup kitchens, upping, protecting adoption rates, protecting people from debt collectors, basically all this stuff that you really don't think about you don't really get to think in an old D&D campaign, which is all those good characters always have the basis of good thinking of oh, what great monster can I slay? What great, evil or wrong can I just to the fucking legal system and bringing this guy in front of a court? It's never, how do I fix poverty?
I would love to see Aragorn tackle unemployment in Gondor.
I would love to. It's never like Star Wars. You don't think about, all right, so who's gonna pay for all these new intergalactic docking ports after the Empire's gone?
Look, we'll make the Ewoks do it.
Make the Ewoks do it. Well, someone's got to be in the bottom now. Might as well be the Ewoks.
Nobody likes the Ewoks.
But yeah, it's this idea, he is desperately trying to not be violent anymore. He's trying desperately to be the non-weapon. And his son, who he raised with these dedicated values, knows that Sully is the Dragon of Dur, because there's not many fucking dragons to be around. And now he's seeing him slowly, over the years, as he's growing up in his troubled teenage years, very angsty and rebellious. He's seeing his own father, the own man who threw a fucking cardinal out of the air while flying into a crowd of people, beating that guy to death. He saw that guy, and now he's being what about kittens? How are we gonna get up we got less strays, okay? And basically, Simon has said, "Fuck that! I'm gonna punch people now." Because you clearly are cutting at the snuff. You've lost your fucking edge, old man. And so now, during season 2, it's slowly basically relapsing, thinking like, God damn it, I have to be a weapon again, and I really don't want to. And now I'm at the fucking point where the people who made me be the worst version of myself, a violent monster, who labeled me as such a violent monster, I'm now in their home territory, and they're still talking hot, mad smack about me. What the fuck is a brother supposed to do? Run, y'all, fade.
God damn it.
Mad spicy. I'm the one who breathes fire.
Stop. God damn it. Oh, God. It also doesn't help that Thrain is just genuinely a terrible place.
Yeah.
The Warforged, the cool robot race that everybody wants to play in D&D because they're overpowered, they're enslaved, and they kind of did a little genocide on the Shifters, another cool D&D race that absolutely nobody plays. Like, Thrain's just bad, and now your character's returned there and has a lot of conflicting ideas and ideals.
Yeah, because he has always repped the Silver Flame. He wears it on his fucking chest armor. Like,
yeah.
He's draped in the iconography of Silver Flame. He has tried his best through the lens of his own book, where this is the true meaning of the Silver Flame, written by a guy from a kingdom who got fucking wiped, who couldn't see the corruption that would befall it, and now he's there seeing what people actually think of the Silver Flame, and basically he thinks he's been peddling this bullshit his entire life, inadvertently supporting it. He's seeing it all there. And now he's like, I'm about to act up.
Also, technically, he's a Caneth, but we don't think about that.
We don't talk about that. It won't come
Everybody's
up.
a Caneth.
Yeah. But yeah. I feel like the end of this podcast is really just giving me my flowers, and I don't want that. I don't have no garden. I don't know where to put these.
I was thinking that myself. How do we end this? Because I was going to talk about video games that we liked and whatnot, but instead we spent most of the podcast, all of the podcast, talking about D&D.
Yeah. Well, to pick up where we last left off, I feel like is an appropriate way to approach the new year. And all we have to do is continue to do it consistently.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say we can just make this episode longer, but fuck that.
No. If we're going to do this consistent, what we got to do is get into a feverish pitch of making episodes and then not do it for 6 months.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Continue.
I was going to say, out of that, pick up cocaine addictions.
Happy New Year, all of our watchers of the Dabble and Babble podcast. He's Dabble and I'm Babble.
Yep.
Happy 2023.
And remember, kids, if your dad is drinking again, don't stop him.
Oh, no. Is that it? Is that how you're ending it? There's no punchline?
The only punchline's going to come in court.
Goodbye. I stopped recording.